In 2004, Fable promised the world. In 2025, is it legendary or just legacy? Recently, I played the first Fable, more specifically the Anniversary Edition, for the first time. And whilst it's an old game and we've made so many leaps in video game development, was it worth going back and playing it? Fable 1, made by Lionhead Studio and Peter Molyneux, is an action RPG game that focused heavily on player choice and the morality of the player character. The story was driven by your decisions that held real consequences, depending on your actions in-game, and at the time it allowed the perception of a truly unique playthrough for each player depending on the decisions made in the game. With interesting game tech like real-time aging of the character and charming British humour, Fable went on to become a fan favourite within the RPG genre, and is still spoken about to this day. So at its core, Fable is an action RPG, heavily focused on narrative and player choice. With enjoyable combat, vast exploration and world building, skill and magic-based leveling, and the decision-based morality system, there is a lot to consider when looking at this game. First, let's take a look at the combat. So the combat is made up of three main elements, which is melee, ranged, and magic. And throughout a playthrough of Fable, you'll come across many different enemies. The bandits, the Belverines, the hobs, the different trolls. And realistically, for the most part, any combination of weaponry will do the trick. Now, the melee was enjoyable, and for an older game, didn't actually feel that clunky. There were moments where I noticed the age and could see the lack of common mechanics that we do have today, like not being able to hit an enemy properly when they are down, and the amount of iframes that an enemy gets when getting back up. But the majority of my playthrough, I predominantly use the melee mechanic when in combat encounters. The ranged weaponry, like the bows, I rarely used, and honestly didn't see much of a need for it. The targeting of the bow was a little clunky, and generally if you hit an enemy, it brings its friends running towards you anyway, so at that point there's no real reason to hit from range. For moments I did want to hit from range, the magic system worked so much better, and this was much easier to use. I didn't upgrade the bow all that much and only put a few points into the skills to make it do more damage, so that could be a major factor in why I didn't enjoy it as much. But like I said, the magic really did make up for it. And the magic system was great. Some of the spells were a little rough, but for the most part, I think this is the most powerful system in the game. The fireball and force push became my go-to for pretty much every combat encounter and were really enjoyable to use. The force push became my saving grace, and I just loved blasting enemies away to sort of fight them one-on-one. All this considered, I don't think the combat has aged that badly though, and it was still very enjoyable and comfortable to use. It does take a little bit to get used to, experimenting with what does and doesn't work, but it doesn't take away from the main gameplay. Now, when it comes to exploring the game, the exploration was fantastic. Such a big, open and vibrant world with so much detail and difference. You have eerie swamps, large towns full of life, dank, dark caves, and detailed bandit camps that really sell the concept of bad guys. There are NPCs moving around the areas in seemingly natural ways, and the whole world just feels really lived in and well thought up. I had a lot of fun traveling from location to location, and for the most part of the game didn't worry too much about fast travel, and really enjoyed looking at all the different characters' movements throughout the world. The exploration and world building in this game is amazing and still stands out today. We have a lot of games these days that have these massive open worlds, but lack that living element. But I think Fable did that part great. The skill and magic leveling was exactly what it sounds like. You gain experience from quests or killing things, which is actually explained as taking the knowledge of the thing that you killed, which is a concept that I really enjoyed, and you use it to level up the different skills and magical abilities. So the experience you gain comes in 4 different types, which is general, strength, will, and skill, and each earned from using that specific skill. So you get will experience when you kill something with magic, and strength you get from melee weapons, and so on for the rest of them. This was really easy to use and felt very well thought out and executed, so there's no issue here at all. And finally, we have the decisions and moral-based progression. this is where it can get a little bit opinionated. When it came out, this would have felt like complete freedom. You go around the world doing pretty much anything you want, and there would be consequences both of body and interaction with the world around you. So do too many evil things and your appearance would change. You have less access to merchants and you gain new abilities that track with the evil path. Do all good things and the opposite effect takes place. White teeth, blue eyes, halo, more merchant interactions, as well as access to the good spells. Now, if you compare this with more recent games, this is just the base level of freedom. Compared to the later Fable games and even other RPGs, the choices you made were limited. Do I help protect a farm or do I destroy it? Do I help a trader stuck in a swamp or do I just leave him there? Pretty simple things like this. You couldn't purchase property like in the later games, your decisions to be good or evil doesn't alter the end game content, and new exploration lines or dialogue through main cutscenes don't open or change depending on your alignment. I personally don't see this as a bad thing. It's just that if you're going to go back to the game, hearing that there is so much freedom within the world, you may be a little bit disappointed. For the most part, Fable 1 is a linear story with open world aspects where your decisions change very little on the overall outcomes of the game. But like I said, it didn't really change the way I played or how I felt once finishing it. Overall, the gameplay and mechanics have touches of an outdated feel, but altogether they produce a wonderful game that plays quite well considering its age and was really enjoyable pretty much all the way through. But when looking at this as a whole, we can't just talk about the gameplay and mechanics without considering the story and atmosphere. Here is where I believe the first Fable really shines. The story for Fable 1 is a pretty well-known story archetype. It's just the hero's journey story with a few bits and bobs added here and there for the sake of adventure. We have a call to adventure, meeting the mentor, crossing the threshold, tests, allies, new enemies, the ordeal, the reward, the resurrection, and the return to New Ordinary. And I know I skipped some parts of the hero's journey, but for those who don't know about the hero's journey, I highly recommend looking it up. It's used for so many different stories. And while it is an archetype we have seen 1,000 times over, Fable's ability to immerse you in the world and the story is absolutely fantastic. The NPCs had great dialogue for the most part, giving you good information, but not absolutely lore dumping on you. And the world, like I mentioned before, it feels like it is living, with people moving all around you and interacting with the area. The enemies had personalities and the big bads had depth, sometimes even making it so you didn't want to kill them. There were friendships, quirky characters, and a constant enticing pull to go and explore further. The world itself was bright and vibrant, but there was always tones of darkness around every corner, giving you a gritty medieval feel while still keeping the nostalgic cartoonish charm. And the soundtrack was just as great, really setting the scene depending on where you were and what you were doing. Overall, story-wise, Fable 1 has my favorite story arc of the entire franchise and does such an amazing job at building the foundation of a world that you know you want to return to for future iterations. Now, I know what you're thinking, but how does it play? And as I mentioned in the combat section, for the most part, it plays really well. It has its areas of clunkiness and outdatedness, but if it was a running machine, it still runs relatively smoothly. If I really had to get picky with it, the combat has some weaknesses and takes a little bit to get the hang of or even get used to. There are some abilities that are far too OP, which can also be fun, but once you find that kind of good rhythm, it stops the need to further explore into the character development. Some of the dialogue's a little bit cheesy, but we look past that because it still works within the telling of the story. My honest opinion on whether this is still playable in 2025 is yes, it is, 100%. I went into it a little worried it would be janky, and I ended up fixated on it until I finished it. If I had to give it a rating, I'd give it a solid 4 out of 5. It's got a great story and world with some minor issues with gameplay that can definitely be tolerated. If you're into adventure RPG games and enjoy retro games, or even if you are starting to get into retro and you haven't played the original Fable, I highly recommend giving it a go. You will not be disappointed by the story that it tells. And it's cool to see the world of Albion at the beginning of this tale with the Heroes Guild still intact and operating at majority full force. Did you play Fable 1 back in the day, or have you jumped into it more recently like myself? Would you recommend it in 2025? Let me know in the comments. If you like retro games, collecting, and seeing someone play through your favorite games for the first time in 2025, subscribe to the channel and let me know what I should play next. I appreciate you hanging out with me through my thoughts on Fable 1, and keep an eye out for the Fable 2 playthrough, as well as a potential review coming soon. I'll see you in the next one, and as always, enjoy your gaming.